I'm Meg, and today I'm going to talk to you about the multiple methods I use to keep critters out of my snacks. I have used every single one of these here, and I've even got a surprise method for you at the very end. Let's get going. First up, we have the Bear Can. This is a Barricade Weekender. It is an ultra lightweight, uber expensive carbon fiber bear can. It's the lightest one on the market. It weighs only 31 ounces. Most people are going to be familiar with the Bear Volt. Bear cans are going to be the most robust and most foolproof way to store your food. You can see here that the can is very, very robust and hard to get into. In fact, you actually need a tool to get into most bear cans. Although some people can do it with their hands, I'm just not one of those people. You want to take the top, undo the little screws, pop the top open, and inside you have your stuff. Now, first of all, there are a lot of areas that require hard-sided bear cans. I will always use a hard-sided bear can if I am in grizzly country or if I'm in an area where the wilderness regulations require me to use one. The biggest downside to bear cans is that they're heavy and they're bulky. You're going to take a pretty big weight penalty. This is the lightest bear can on the market at under 2 pounds. However, more of the affordable ones are up into the 3-pound range, which is quite a bit. The other thing I really dislike about bear cans is they don't pack very well. In fact, your pack might actually not be able to accommodate a bear can. So it's something you definitely want to look at if you're buying your backpacking gear and you're going to be in a place where you're required to use a bear can quite often. The other big downside to them is that they're a bit of a pain in the butt to use. Yeah, it took me about 20 seconds to open this one. However, it was really common for me to forget to put something in my bear can or to forget that I wanted something out of my bear can while I was running around camp, especially when I was doing it with my toddler running around. So I found myself opening and closing and opening and closing and opening and closing this thing so many times. It really gets old really quickly. I only recommend using one of these if you have to, or buying one of these if you primarily backpack in areas that require them or you live in grizzly country. Next up on the list is the bear sack. Now, most people use the rather popular sacks. I happen to own an Adatech grizzly bear locker. It's essentially an industrial sack that you can use to protect your food. Now, this one only weighs 7 or 8 ounces, so a good deal lighter and easier to manage than a bear can. I can fit about 3 to 4 days worth of food in here. I have stuffed a week's worth of food in here. However, it is quite difficult and I wouldn't recommend it for a beginner. It works really simply. There's a special knot you tie and you cinch it down and then you tie it around a tree. Now, this protects the bear from getting into your food, but it does not protect your food. Meaning if a bear were to come up to this, they're going to grab on it, they're going to smash your food, they're going to squish it around, and you're probably going to be left with a lot of mush. In fact, the International Grizzly Bear Committee certifies these, and they're allowed to even have puncture wounds in them through the certification process. So it's more for the bear and less for you, because bears that get into food and get habituated by food often end up getting put down. And also, it's not waterproof. The exterior of the bag is, but when you sit it down, there's inevitably going to be a hole in the top. So if you're having it hanging and it rains, water can get into your food, which I combat by using one of these. This is an Opsak Loksak. They're 12 1/4 by 20-inch size. They come in packs of 2. They're very cost effective. They are odor proof, meaning that once you zip them up, smells don't get out. And what I'll do is I'll put one for my trash and one for my food, and then I'll put it all in here. I even use these with a bear can because I just don't like to have my trash loose, especially if I'm with my toddler and I've got a dirty diaper in there. So these are really handy, and I strongly recommend them to augment any system you may go with. But the big downside to these guys is they get holes. And I'm going to tell you a real tragic story about that here in just a second. The system also packs a lot nicer, so it's a lot easier for you to get all your food plus have enough room for all of your extra gear in most backpacking packs. My next setup is a little bit different. This is certainly the lightest you can go and the cheapest you can go with your bear protection. However, it is the riskiest. What this is a dry sack. This is a 20-liter Osprey dry sack. Honestly, this one's old. They make a lot better ones now that are Dyneema and a lot lighter than this one, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. And inside, I don't have food in here because I'm not backpacking right now. And inside, I put the Loksak, right? So this is a beat-up Loksak. You can see, well used, well loved. And what I love about this system is it's really ideal where you're not really likely to encounter a bear. For example, I live in Colorado, and a lot of people who backpack above tree line specifically use this setup. However, it is risky. There is nothing about this that is protecting your food from bears. However, there is a lot about this system that is protecting your food from mini bears. And the mini bears tend to be way more of a nuisance and concern than an actual bear. I know it sounds totally counterintuitive. However, mice, rodents, foxes, raccoons, all of the above, you're far more likely to have problems with those on the trail. The only time one of these has ever failed me is when it developed a pinhole break that I didn't see. I had my dog's food in one of these while backpacking in the Gore Range, and I left my food unattended on the ground during the middle of the day while I quickly ran and grabbed some water. And I came back, and a marmot had gotten into my dog's food. Fortunately, my food was fine. However, it was a gentle reminder not to leave these on the ground, and they aren't a foolproof system at all. However, they're super lightweight and definitely affordable, and a lot of people do use this. I really wouldn't recommend this unless bears are just generally not a concern at all. And always check the integrity of the Loksak before you go. Basically, all I do is blow a little bit of air into it and I zip it closed and then I push on it and see if I could hear any holes. You could also submerge it underwater with a little bit of air in it and check it that way too. I'm just a little bit lazy. Another thing you can do with this system is roll it up, clip it, use some cordelette, swing it over a tree. Now, to do a proper bear hang is actually quite hard in most areas, especially out here in the Mountain West where you don't have the right trees for it. But a lot of people do use it, and it is pretty bear proof if you do a proper bear hang. That brings us to our last option. Now, this is a pretty niche piece of gear, but if you're, say, out in the desert doing some rad backpacks, then your version of a bear are pack rats, and they can be fierce. It's not just the pack rats you have to worry about. Ravens know how to open zippers. So that is where this next piece of gear comes into play. This is a rat sack. This is a 20-liter rat sack. It weighs about 8 ounces. Now, I use these exclusively while I'm backpacking in the desert to protect my food from mice, ravens, and rats. And these work really, really well. It also has a grommet on it so you can hang it. So in theory, you could use this with an Opsak and it would be a similar system to the dry bag I just showed you. However, it's still not bear proof and it weighs a little bit more than that other system. So what's the best system for you? Well, that's really going to depend on where you spend most of your time while you're backpacking. If you're in the desert and you occasionally do a trip to the Sierra, then chances are you're going to want a rat sack and you can rent or borrow a bear can for more of your mountain adventures. If you live in grizzly country or you are in an area that has a lot of rules and regulations regarding bear safety, then unfortunately for you, you're going to want to have a bear can. If you're in an area where a lot of bears are present that aren't grizzlies and you don't have bear can regulations, this is going to likely be the best method. So what do I use? To be honest, I like all of these. What am I using the most? Well, lately it's been the rat sack because I've been spending a ton of time out in the desert. But when it comes to bear protection, I do have one that I recommend above all else. As much as it pains me and as great as it has worked in the past, I have since given up my Opsak dry bag combo. I just feel like there's too many people coming into the backcountry now and bear activity is going to get heightened. And I'd just rather be safe than sorry for both myself and the animals. So I've switched over to the Aditech Grizzly Locker. And this is normally what I'm picking up whenever I'm in the mountains. However, whenever a bear can is required, I am picking up the Barricade Weekender. It is just so lightweight and very easy to use. And although it never goes on sale, I'm just at a point in my backpacking career where I can justify the price of one of these. However, I will willingly admit to you that I frequently borrow my friends. So which team are you on? Sack, bag, or can? Got to the end of this video and realized you're going to be spending even more money? Well, don't worry. I've got you covered with a few expert secrets that will save you 8.5 pounds off of your backpacking weight for less than $75.